Once you get settled agriculture, you get the ingredients for civilizations. And while not all anthropologists and historians necessarily agree 100% on all the elements that are needed to have a civilization, there is a lot of agreement between at least five or six of them. So, for our purposes, and this is going to be particularly important for your first analytical response, people who live in what we call a civilization have to have at least six defining characteristics. One of them, and most importantly, is that they live in an urban area, or at least a vast percentage of them do, right? So cities or towns, that doesn't mean that there aren't people in the countryside that interact with them, but the society itself is focused around a central nucleated area. Within that city, there are distinct religious structures with individuals who are priests and gods that are worshipped. And if you think about how unpredictable the world is today, but especially how unpredictable it would have seemed back in the day when people didn't understand the science behind a lot of natural phenomena, you might understand why religion becomes a means for understanding the unknowable and asking the really big questions, or even the smaller questions like, hey, where does that thunder come from? Or what happens when I die? Along with this, normally very specific political and military structures, often combined into one, with a chief being both a political leader and a military leader. You get an economically based social structure. And what I mean by that is not everybody is farmers or husbandmen, not people who raise animals or crops. Because these settled agricultural communities can produce more food than is needed for individuals, that means that some people can do other things, and you get the development of, along with economies, new artistic and intellectual skills. Things like carpentry and masonry and metallurgy and weapon making, and eventually the development of schools and scribes. And that leads into the one that I have fifth up here, which not everybody agrees on, but I think is particularly important, the development of writing, which earliest on is used for record-keeping purposes because you want to know how many people you have and how many acres of grain you have under production so that you can collect taxes. But eventually then allows that writing to move beyond just record-keeping into recording laws and codes and eventually religious texts. And that's going to be really the first two documents that we look at this week. One is a set of laws from ancient Babylon, Hammurabi's Law Code, and one is one of the oldest stories that we know of, which is the Epic of Gilgamesh.